Welcome to the Yappy Hour, powered by Yappily, the podcast for dog lovers who want to better understand and connect with their canine companions. I'm your host, Nathan Dunleavy, and today we're diving back into a topic close to my heart, separation anxiety. This time I'm joined by Rosee Riggs, a certified separation anxiety pro behaviour consultant and myth-busting powerhouse, who's on a mission to clear up all the confusion and guilt that often surrounds the emotional disorder. If you've ever been told your dog's just spoiled or that they'll get over it, if you ignore them, this is the episode you need to hear. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's get started. Welcome back to the Yappy Hour, powered by Yappily. I'm your host, Nathan Dunleavy, and I'm so excited to bring you another episode of the Yappy Hour today. Joining me today is Rosee Riggs. Welcome, Rosee, to the Yappy Hour. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you so much for the invitation, Nathan. It's so nice to be here.
You are most welcome. And I just asked you before we hit record how I pronounced your name, because I can't pronounce my R's, and then as I said it, I don't think it came out right because I can't pronounce my R's. So it's Rosee Riggs.
Yes, Rosee Riggs, exactly.
Well, we're gonna stick with Rosee anyway, so that's fine. So I'm really looking forward to this one because even though SA separation anxiety is a topic I know well, I still hear a lot of myths popping up again and again, and it's just really great to get someone else's perspective on it and to bust some of those myths, which we're going to be doing today. What made you decide to focus much of your work on tackling misinformation, Rosee?
Well, I've been a canine consultant for like 12 years, and I've become more and more specialized in anxious and fearful dogs and dogs from a deprivation background. So in various different contexts, people come to me, incredibly dedicated people who have spent a lot of money and a lot of time trying to help their dog, and not only on the internet but also unfortunately from trainers who don't have training in this, have been advised all sorts of stuff which they can see is making it worse. Recently I have now a very successful client whose dog is chilled at a couple of hours, but they spent 5 years trying to do that. And so misinformation is a huge problem in our world anyway at the moment, but misinformation about this subject means that you've got a dog with a severe welfare issue. It causes such distress, and the caregivers are distressed of seeing their dog like this, and then they're being given information which makes things worse. So that's why I'm quite passionate about trying to cut to the chase, really, because the good news is that we can very reliably help dogs with this problem. It's not always the case, right? Because I had a greyhound. I adopted a greyhound 12 years ago now, Stevie, and he could only stay alone with me. He had true separation anxiety in the sense that he loved people. He was very open with people, but having come from what I think is a deprivation background, just living in kennels and not having much human contact, he decided that I was the person who was going to keep him safe, because that's what it's always about, Nathan. It's about feeling the dog feeling safe. And so at that time there wasn't a method really that anybody seemed to know about. So so I know what it's like firsthand. You do as well.
Yes, you and me both. Our viewers will know that I've got my own SA dog and I love talking about it, so it's great to get your perspective on things, Rosee. So why do you think that SA is so widely misunderstood even in 2025?
Well, that is a big question, but when I adopted Stevie was 2012, and nobody was talking about it at all. If you said, I was actually in the middle of doing my training as a canine behavior consultant at that time, and it was always a bit sort of like, oh, your dog can't stay on their own, that's tough. Yeah, that was it. But I mean, greyhound is not a chihuahua. He was a big greyhound, and he had never lived in a house before. So, and he didn't
Mm.
know what a door was. So if he wanted to try and get out, he would try and get out the windows, and he would be bringing down the curtains, and there would be devastation.
Wow.
And I had two whippets at the same time, and when I came home, this only happened a couple of times because I cottoned on pretty quickly. But yeah, so they were looking like this. So at that time, there was really nothing out there except that there was one book by someone quite famous who said to practice with keys, picking up your keys,
Oh,
hundreds of
yes.
times every day, and putting on your jacket and giving your dog a Kong and leaving them to it. Well, Stevie didn't know what a Kong was. So, and when he was excited, which was often at that stage because he'd just come from the racetrack. So,
Oh.
they're either like very tired and or very, very hyper. But I picked up my keys and put them down once, exactly once. And I figured out that that is not going to help us at all because he was frantic. It just,
Oh.
triggered the fear that I was leaving. So I thought, well, I don't think that's going to work for us. Yeah. And I didn't know what a con was anyway. So I figured at that stage that um, if, for example, I had a child who was afraid of the dark, I wasn't going to leave his child in the dark. And so I thought, well, I can't leave him alone, right?
Mm. Mm.
So I managed absences. I got him used to and comfortable and feel safe with other people. And then I went to look. And so John Bradshaw, the wonderful canine scientist in Bristol, he had just published a book in 2011 called Dog Sense, or In Defense of Dogs, I think it's called.
Mm.
And he was the first person to draw attention to the fact that it's a very, very difficult, very severe welfare issue, but there still wasn't a
Mm.
method. So one of the reasons I think is that knowing how to deal with it is relatively recent, or developing a very effective method is relatively recent.
Mm.
Then, of course, in the meantime, many people have tried all sorts of stuff, and that is all over the internet. The internet has a very long memory. And so when people are Googling, how do I help my dog stay at home alone, or whatever they're Googling, they're coming up with a lot of outdated stuff. I think that's probably the main reason. Also, in social media groups that I look at, I've left a lot of them now because it's difficult to watch. But unless they are moderated and admin well, so that it's clear who is an owner and who is actually a qualified behaviorist,
Yes. Yes, I know.
there is so much terrible advice. My dog has it. Yes, we'll just put them in a crate, or
Oh,
just
gosh.
go out for 5 minutes and then the next day go out for 10 minutes. Well, that's a lot
Mm.
if you are terrified of something, isn't it? So,
Mm. Mm.
whether that sort of answers your question a little bit.
No, no, that's great.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. We're going to be moving on to our next section, which is all about the top myths we need to let go of. So, Rosie,
Yeah.
what would you say are the most common myths you hear about SA that still do the rounds online?
All right. Yeah. So we're getting into these groups and what's going around. I think probably depending on where you are, one of the main things is that a crate, somehow putting your dog in a crate will somehow make them feel safe, and
Mm.
or just stop the behavior. I think those are people who often don't look beyond the behavior. That
Yeah.
if a dog has given up in a crate or something that solved the problem. But we know that most clients who've ever come to me who've had that advice also just tried it once, because they saw that this extra level of helplessness and isolation for the dog just made it worse. I mean, they're just frantic. So as it happens, where I live in Austria, it is illegal to keep your dog in a crate at home.
Oh, interesting. I
Yes.
never knew that.
For welfare reasons, it's okay to use a crate for travel purposes, travel safety, or recovery from medical. But to come to me, usually actually have said we may have tried it once, but we didn't think that was a good idea either. So putting your dog in a crate is not going to help. It's, yeah. And that is let your dog cry it out. So
Yeah. Oh gosh.
sadly, this also used to be practiced with children,
It
with
did. Yeah.
babies. Yeah, when they said, if you pick a baby up who's crying, they'll be spoiled or something like that. In fact, I experienced that when I had my daughter, that people were telling me not to do that. But we know now that the distress that causes can be so extreme that can even cause neurological damage if it goes long enough.
Yeah.
And certainly if it happens once or more, it's traumatizing. How could it not be if you're crying for help? I imagine
Yeah.
that if somebody stuck me in a room with poisonous vipers and I was just screaming, screaming. Some dogs have actually, for example, they lost their voice. They can't, their voice is damaged from trying to, yeah, or they hurt
Oh
themselves
god.
to escape, yeah. So
Yeah.
we don't want our dogs cried out. That's another thing that, at least actually, what did I put on here? Using food is a big one. That's what I had also with my dog Stevie, is I give him a Kong or something. And with that is, I actually had a client who tried that because they were advised to do that, and they given, so before they left, they would come with a treat or a chew or something, and
Yeah.
it took exactly 2 days, and they could no longer feed their dog. Their dog was terrified of the food.
Oh god, they poisoned the food. Yeah. Yeah. That
Yeah,
cue.
the cue, because the dog immediately realized. I mean, it's classical Pavlov, isn't it? This conditioning that it's the same with us. If somebody gave me some tiramisu and then gave me an electric shock or something, I would be very wary about.
So.
And every time I looked at a tiramisu, I would think about that pain. And it's no different for our dogs. 2 days, and she could no longer feed her dog. The dog was
Wow.
terrified. Yeah, when she approached
Gosh.
the other thing
Yeah.
is, of course, if dogs are interested in the food and they're chewing, or they may be interested in the Kong and they're distracted, then they will at some point suddenly realize they're alone and go from being presumably calm to a panic attack and immediately, which we also, I mean, that serves nobody. And distracting your dog is not going to teach them anything, is
No.
it?
Yeah.
So,
Brilliant.
Ella, sorry, did you want to say something?
No, no, go on.
So allied to that, which is the idea that people have been told to distract their dog, give them something to eat or whatever, but to leave without them noticing.
Yeah.
So what does the dog learn from that? They learn they've been tricked, and they
Yeah.
suddenly learn they're losing trust in their caregiver. And the worst of it is that they become hyper vigilant. You can see dogs who are very, very, very fixated on every movement that the caregiver, because they are having to rhyme together the intention. What's what's this person going to do? They got up off the sofa. Are they leaving? Are they not leaving? If they're leaving, are they taking me with them? Yeah. This is the dilemma of the dog, and they're in permanent suspense.
Yeah.
I used to be a theatre director, right? And the definition of suspense is that you know something's going to happen, but you don't know when.
Mm.
This is the situation the dog is in. At some point, when your person is moving, they are leaving, but you don't know when. Yeah. So you're
Yeah.
alert to that permanent tension. Yeah. So that's why predictability is so important. So I'm a
Yeah.
great fan of using a signal, a safe signal, so that your dog knows that when I say this, when I show you, I use this a lot, and it's been a game changer for a lot of dogs. It's really predictable, makes your moves predictable when you're doing that. So another myth is to make things unpredictable. I've had a client who came to me from a very famous franchise, and they were told to make things as unpredictable for their dog as possible. That means leaving through different doors, if you happen to have different doors, front doors, back doors, side doors, any kind of door, but don't make it the same, and to go for arbitrary lengths of time. So that didn't work either, because the dog has nothing to get a grasp on. Whereas we're doing our training, we're building up in very tiny increments, a very safe ritual, which actually the dogs, after a while, astonishing though it is, to find quite boring, right? So they're doing that again, are we? Okay, so half an hour of just you walking backwards and forwards, but they learn when I give this predictable signal, it's going to be boring, and it is boring. And I know that most trainers are very proud, rightly, of motivating a dog to do something, and I
Yeah.
am very proud that I can very effectively bore a dog. That's, yeah. So.
Brilliant.
Yeah, what else have we got on there's so many, unfortunately.
That's okay.
Letting your dog sleep on your bed, that causes separation anxiety. No, it doesn't. End of. It does not. How people come up with these things, though, isn't it,
I
really?
know. People just suddenly think they're an expert. So yeah.
And then a lot of people think that their dog has separation fears when they follow them around in the house all the time. But I read recently somewhere that I think 64% of dogs who follow you around in the house don't have separation issues at all.
Yeah, I've got some that do that to me. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's either they just want to be with us,
They do.
which
They just want to be with you.
just want to be with you. It'd be awful if they didn't, really. And sometimes I have found that people have it by
Right.
mistake. Yeah, so that could be something that maybe people have got into habit of sort of going into the kitchen, making some food, and just sort of dropping bits of food, or just reinforcing it, which is not
Yeah.
too good for the dog, because they're always sort of looking whether something's going to happen, and they don't get a lot of rest. But yeah, yeah, this was a story. People are told that if your dog greets you calmly when you come home, or they assume that if your dog greets you calmly when you get home, that they had no problems while you were out.
Oh.
That's
Okay.
yeah, that's quite a pernicious. I have to tell you a story. This is a sad story, but a trainer colleague of mine had a dog who had come to her for many, many years for sort of nose work and fun stuff, and there wasn't really a problem, and she knew the family really well. And one day the family put up a camera in the house for a reason which had nothing to do with the dog. And they discovered that when they were at work during the day, the dog was pacing around the sitting room, up the stairs, around the landing, down the stairs, around the sitting room, and up the stairs and around the landing all day.
What, looking for them?
No, the dog had developed an obsessive behaviour to deal with the fear, presumably
Okay.
of ability to cope. And in that time, the dog didn't sleep, the dog didn't drink anything. It was,
Oh,
and when the family came home, the dog greeted them totally normally.
yeah.
So since
Interesting.
then, I said, don't make any assumptions until you put up a camera in your
Yeah.
house, because you really don't know. Some dogs greet people calmly, some are a bit more full on, as we know, but that we can't know how they were doing when we were
Yeah.
out from that. Yeah,
Yeah.
we talked about keys and jackets and shoes, and that is actually taught to a lot of trainers. It has been taught over many, many years, and it seems logical because chronologically that's the first thing we're doing, and it's the first thing the dog may get upset about. Say, oh, you're getting your keys. But actually, if we think about it logically from the dog's point of view, they're not actually afraid usually of the keys or the jacket or the shoes. They're afraid of you leaving. So if we solve that problem first,
Yeah.
because what's the point? First of all, what's the point of practicing something which is unnecessary? Because you may find when your dog is happy with you being away for a while that they're not too bothered about the keys or something, because it's just a signal for something that terrible is going to happen at the moment. But the worst thing is that we're actually making it worse, because if we do that, we're just triggering the fear. We're just triggering a fear response over and over and over again. And the dog is going, are you leaving? Oh, you're not leaving. Okay. Are you leaving? No, you're
Yeah.
not. I mean, imagine that all these
Oh, it's
hundreds
too.
of times a day.
Yeah. You're
People
kind of
do.
getting them, you're getting them worked up, and then you're not, and then you are, then you're not.
Yeah, you know. Oh
They're
yes,
just
you
in a
are.
constant
Yeah,
state of
yeah,
franticness and over arousal.
yeah. I mean, how
Not.
unpleasant is that? In actual fact, thinking about it that way, if you wanted to torment a dog, that would be a fairly
Oh
efficient
God.
way of doing it, which is so
I mean, I
sad.
can see the point, but obviously, yeah, I can see the what you're saying. You've got to work with a dog in front of you every time, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, some people say they have success with that, but I always think, well, if your dog's problem is the leaving, if you solve that first, then you may not do all that
Yeah.
practicing with the
Yeah.
keys. And I'm a great fan of not having to do training you don't have to do. What's the point in spending all that time, really?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So there are only two more I think I had on my little list. Oh no,
Okay.
one more. It's just arbitrary times. It's like, okay, well, the way to deal with this, you get this on Facebook a lot, is go out 5 minutes today and go out 10 minutes tomorrow. And I have a friend who is terrified of traveling in a lift. And if I said to her, well, don't worry, we'll sort this out. We're going to put you in a lift today for 5 minutes. I'm going to put you in a lift tomorrow for 10 minutes. Yeah, she'd probably have a nervous breakdown at the
Yeah.
thought of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, these are things that, they sound good in a way, but if you look at them closer, yeah, there's so many of them, aren't there? There,
It's ridiculous.
there are probably many more. Have you got any
Yeah,
more?
no, I'm sure. I think you've covered some that I wouldn't have even thought of. So there was some that I did think of. But moving on to our next question, then we have sort of touched on it a little bit. But why is tough love, in inverted commas, why is the tough love approach so harmful in these cases?
Well, if you mean with tough love is like letting them cry it out, let's
I think so. Yeah.
sort of close the door behind you and they will get used to it. Well, we're talking about a serious fear here, yeah. And so if you close the door on your dog and let them just cry it out, or it may not take that form. They might try to escape. They might pant frantically or things, or get frantic in any sort of way. That is traumatizing. Actually, it
Mm.
really only needs to happen once if it's extreme, but you do that a couple of times and you have a traumatized dog. I don't know what else
Mm.
to say about it, really. There's another myth, actually, that I haven't got on my list, but I should put it on afterwards, is and trainers teach people this. I think it's really sad. If your dog is barking in the house, don't come in until they've stopped.
Right.
So your dog is having a panic attack, and how can they possibly understand they're not going to help them?
Yeah.
They're totally dependent on us, aren't they? And
Yeah.
like, I always think of myself being in a room with vipers or something. If I was screaming for help and I knew somebody was standing outside the door and they're waiting for me to stop screaming. Um,
It's not
not
going to
only
happen.
I don't know whether this is the same with a dog, but not only would I not understand that, I'd be so angry and upset and feel
Mm.
so betrayed. Yeah.
Mm.
So no, so in training, our home alone training, we don't even want to get to that stage, do we? There's
No.
nothing to be said for tough love at all. Actually,
Yeah.
now even in well, not even, but in human relations, we know that love shouldn't hurt,
Mm.
should it?
No.
It should not.
Yeah.
So for me, there's no such thing as tough love. It
Mm.
can be tough, but then it's not love. We need compassion and knowledge.
Mm.
So to say it again, I've said it again, but I'll probably repeat it every 10 minutes. We can help these dogs so effectively. So why torment them when it's only
Yeah.
going to make things worse, right?
Yeah.
No
And I
tough love. No
Yeah,
tough
and I
love.
think we said with the tough love, the quiet out method, you mentioned about the neurological effects it could have. So that's how it could be quite harmful, couldn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course,
Yeah.
trauma is a neurological thing anyway, but yes, I mean, it can really serious cause physical damage as well
Mm.
as psychological damage. You can't really separate them at that point.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right. So our next question is: what are the dangers of trying to shortcut essay recovery with gadgets or gimmicks, Rosie?
Yeah. Well, the first danger is that it's not going to be a shortcut. It's going to make everything much worse and much longer. Right?
That's what I
So,
thought. Yeah.
at that point of view, don't do it to yourself. Never mind your dog, because yeah, we just touched on the food thing. But if you have a fear, being given something nice to eat is not going to help, because fear is comes from a lack of safety, doesn't it? If you
Mm.
don't feel safe, then you're not interested in food. So
Mm.
if I think what you mean by gadgets is some of these automatic treat machines or
Oh
something.
yes. Yeah, like treat and feed and it or something, or what's it called?
Yeah,
Yeah, the
like that.
automatic ones. Yeah.
I don't know I've never used one, so I don't know whether they just throw out treats at regular intervals, or whether you kind of operate it from afar. But basically, the one thing has nothing to do with the other. If if your dog has a fear, then we need to help them recover from that fear, and that
Mm.
means analog to the way that humans, I believe, are treated for fear issues. In human psychology, we call it gradual exposure therapy, I think. And in dog training, we tend to call it desensitization.
Mm.
I think one of the most difficult things for a caregiver to get their head around at first is that in order to get over a fear, you've got to do things you've got to break down the process of leaving into such tiny, tiny amounts so you're not triggering the fear. And instead, because it is a neurological issue, the dog is sort of saying, and can say, I can do that. That's not a problem. I can do that. And so the training is really setting up a situation where your dog is able to say or to think or to feel, I can do that over and over and over again.
Mm.
If you think about it, and I have a little poster actually on my social media about this, it's a bit counterintuitive, but we have to practice what the dog can do and not what they can't do. Right. Otherwise, if you're practicing what they can't do, they're going to be practicing, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't cope. And that's not going to help anybody. Whether they're getting treats thrown at them out of a machine, or are there any other kind of gadgets people use?
I
Apart from plates, of course, you could say that's a gadget.
Yeah, I guess like maybe like the cameras, they speak to him through the camera and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, as far as I know, dogs just find that confusing, and it's
Mm.
not the same as social support, which is what
Mm.
I mean. Dogs are incredibly emotionally wise, aren't they? They have so much
Mm.
emotional intelligence.
Mm.
I don't think that a sort of a voice coming from it's going to have much of an effect on it. As far as I know, people who've tried it say their dogs are just confused. It's
Mm.
also not teaching them a skill. We have to remember what we need to do is not to just stop behaviors that we can
Mm.
see, because dogs are trying to relieve themselves from fear. That's what the behaviors are
Mm.
that we're seeing, aren't they? If dogs are barking, whining, drooling, panting, or whatever they're doing, their body is trying to relieve them from this fear.
Mm. Mm.
And
What's
that is
your thought? Go on, my love.
no, I mean that's not going to happen by giving them things which have not to do with us. They need our support. And
Mm. Yeah, they need that connection. What's your thoughts on white noise then, or playing Alexa of relaxing, calming dog music?
well, there is separation anxiety is often accompanied as a comorbidity thing with sound sensitivity,
Mm.
and sometimes we can help a dog with noise or a sound, music or something. I don't recommend using. I don't know much about Alexa, to be honest, but I don't recommend using sort of the TV or radio, because you don't know what they're going to play. You don't know whether they're
Mm.
going to play fireworks or a report from a war where there are shots and stuff like that. It's amazing how often also sort of like radio drama and stuff play in dog barking as a sound effect, right? I think the idea behind that is trying to keep your dog company,
Mm.
although I don't think that it's the same as the treat machines or the voices or anything. I think a dog knows whether it's true connection. I love that word that you use. That's really what we're looking for, is connection, or whether it's just something automated.
Okay. I got another question for you, another myth. I don't know if we're going to cover it, but I'm just going to throw it out there now.
Oh yeah.
That getting another dog will help your SA dog. Mm.
Well, I know people who have done that. They have got a dog and it has helped. I have, however,
The other dog could end up with it. You got two then.
yeah, I'm getting to that. The thing is, it doesn't usually work, right? So it's not something that we recommend. You can definitely then have two dogs with separation problems. But even if it does work, it's often a dog maybe who has lost a companion, another dog in the family has died or something, and of course that sort of relief is great, and no doubt helps them. But the fact is that they haven't really learned a new skill.
Mm.
The using the other dog as a helper, which is fine. I mean, obviously, any kind of relief in this situation is fine, but you haven't actually taught your dog anything through. And most of the time, it doesn't work, so we don't recommend it. If you want to
Yeah.
get a second dog, then get a second dog. But I would only do that if you want a second dog, and it's also good, really good for your family situation and for the dog that you already have.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd throw that one out there. So let's move on to our next section, which is all about social media, influencers, and well-meaning advice.
Yeah.
What what role, Rosie, do you think social media plays in keeping these myths alive?
Well, unfortunately, I think it has quite an effect. It does, because it reaches so many people, and I think it taps into something which is absolutely understandable. There has to be said, if you have a dog with these problems, then it is very distressing. It's an enormous burden. You can't leave your house. You're seeing your dog in distress. Your entire life is probably governed by this for a while. So I think on social media it can tap into the wish to deal with this as quickly as possible. And if I'm, which I have been, into groups saying, I am a specialist in this, we can help your dog. It's not a quick, it will take a few months, but then you have a dog who's truly chilled and not just tolerating you, which I actually think is not a very long time to get over, such a fear. But then you maybe have somebody else that they say, well, we put our dog in a crate and that sorted that out. Or we got a dog and that sorted that out. And so I understand that people think, okay, well, we'll try that first because that seems like the easiest option. But they may not recognize the implications of all that. But yeah, it's something that it's really very difficult. You see this going on all the time, and people are very unwilling to accept, however nicely one puts, well, I wouldn't do this, because this. People probably, we have this confirmation bias, don't we? If we believe or hope enough that something really simple and easy is going to deal with it, then it's sometimes difficult to get out of that. However, the tragic thing is that if you actually do this, if you do get professional guidance and you know how to do it, for several weeks, so you know how to do this without making all the mistakes, then you actually really do have a dog who is chilled at home. And
Yeah.
that is in the long run quicker than anything, and then doing it wrong, is it?
Yeah. I think with SA though, unlike other behaviour modification, that there isn't a quick fix. It does take time, and I don't think, rightly or wrongly, people really understand that it can take time and they want quick fixes. But you have to invest that time in order to get to the end goal.
Yeah, but half an hour a day, 5 days a week, seems to be the sweet spot, right? And I have clients, some dogs, it's a bit more complex. Sometimes it takes a bit longer for various reasons, but usually, actually, that is because there are other stressors in it. So, getting a professional, for example, who has a holistic training. I don't mean kind of woo-woo. I mean looking at the whole dog. We can sometimes magic for that dog just by very simple changes. Yeah. A dog who, if, for example, a dog who does better with another door, or I know a dog who was incredibly hyper and rushing around like a maniac and not sleeping at all. And I realized that they were doing much, this is a tiny dog, like a Yorkie mix, I think. was kind of batting about the dog park for 4 hours a day and completely all over the place. And when we sort of switched to kind of sniffy walks instead and that sort of stuff, dogs started sleeping a lot better, which means they're self-regulating better. And it's quite interesting actually, because back to what you were sort of saying about sound sensitivity, that was a dog we actually also did use some music for, because they were incredibly sound. This dog would bark at everything. The neighbours outside then. The interesting thing was, and I have discovered this with a lot of dogs, that during the training, the home alone training, one of the lovely side effects of it is that the dog learns to self-regulate better. And this dog, by the time that they got up to an hour and a half or something, you could see the dog sort of saying, "Oh, there's something I used to bark at. Oh, I don't have to be bothered with that anymore." And and this dog literally stopped barking at anything except for one Rottweiler who used to come by the garden in the evening once a day. Nobody knows how he knew this dog was coming, but he would bark at him. But then he could get himself out of it and recover really quickly. And that's a huge shift, you know. So we said, okay, he can bark at the Rottweiler if you want, but he didn't bark at anything else. How amazing is that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's quite interesting when you sort of think about the white noise side of things and all that. It can be really helpful, but the most helpful thing is helping the dog learn to think and self-regulate. And that's a lovely side effect of this training, I found. Sort of just by observation in the last
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
Good. How can guardians spot the difference between good advice and unqualified opinion online, Rosie?
I don't know, you're going to have to help me with this.
Well, I
Yeah,
just think everyone thinks they're an expert just because, like, they've had dogs for 30 years. It doesn't
yeah,
mean, that's what I think. I'd be thinking along the lines.
I know. You have to, well, I think we have to
Avoid all these myths that we've mentioned.
avoid all the myths. I think the most important thing, really, to cut to the chase, is that if your dog has this problem, you need to get professional help. You need somebody who's a
Yes.
specialist in this. You really do, because somebody called this issue as separation fears a behavioural emergency. It is a behavioural emergency because of the amount of distress it causes your dog. If your dog has a broken leg, you're not going to say, "Oh, I'll deal with it sometime," maybe
To the
next
vet.
week. Yeah. And you're also not going to go to your neighbor and say, or somebody on Facebook and say, "Can you tell me how to mend my dog's leg?" Right? I mean, nobody would think about that. That is an emergency. You need to go to the clinic as fast as you can, or,
Yeah.
any other kind of emergency. And so treat this as a behavioral emergency, which means it's urgent and you need somebody who knows what they're doing. And then it really doesn't always take that long. Yes, it takes a little bit of patience and precision, but it's not going to take as long as if you don't do it. And it's not going to take as long as if you do it wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as the internet and bad information, we're all confronted with it in so many different spheres. We have to um, figure out a way. And I think also being fair and open is one of them. I don't do this very often, but I did venture recently in a group. Actually, it was a German language group, and somebody came up with whatever they came up, one of these myths. I can't really remember what it was now, but I think it was putting a dog in a crate or something. And I said, I am a specialist in separation anxiety, and you need a well executed process of desensitization. It's the only thing that will help. And then somebody came back with, "Well, you're a specialist. That's amazing. It's amazing what what you can be a specialist for these days.
Oh
Right.
gosh.
Well, against that kind of stubbornness and stupidity, if you like, it's quite difficult to, yeah, it is quite difficult. But also, there are really good organisations now who are certifying. We belong to organisations which certify that we are force free, and I know that it's difficult because it's an unregulated industry, and anybody can claim to be force free and do all sorts of stuff. But we do now have our certified separation anxiety pro behaviour consultant, which is what you and I both are. And
Yeah,
for that, I mean, that was a really intensive and comprehensive
it
training. And
was. It
yeah,
was.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
So,
so seek out a professional is what I took from that, and I like behavioural emergencies. So seek out a professional. Don't go on to the local Facebook community groups, which actually might answer our next question, because it's what do you wish people knew before searching for advice on Google or Instagram?
well, they need to know that this is a behavioural emergency, and it's not just. I had a wonderful client, actually, and she was trained to be a dog trainer, and she was really a lovely person. But even she, when her dog started doing this, or she adopted her dog, she thought that her dog just didn't like being at home on their own. She didn't realise until she came to me the depth of this distress and the fear. So I think the really important thing is to take it seriously, isn't it? And you need to
Yeah,
take this seriously and find a professional, and you know,
brilliant.
and then
Right.
really it's the quickest way, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. So moving on to our next section, which is the truth. What actually helps? So, what actually helps dogs with SA, especially those that seem stuck in panic mode?
Okay, well, the first challenge that anybody has when they recognize that their dog is distressed on their own is doing what we call managing absences. That means effectively getting yourself a support network of people that your dog feels comfortable with, and
Mm,
investing a bit of time. You can't just hand the lead to someone and say, okay, my dog feels comfortable. They may, some dogs cope very well with being with other people, but you might have to build that up. Just like some children struggle a bit to be left at kindergarten, and they need to be left at kindergarten, and they need a bit of time to get used to it. A really good dog sitter or a dog walker will also be quite empathetic about how they take the dog. Some dogs are really helped by if they go around the block together and the caregiver leaves maybe in the car and says goodbye and the dog sitter goes in with the dog and spares the dogs the business of their caregiver actually leaving. That helps a lot of
mm,
dogs. Sometimes just changing the ritual, as you know,
mm,
looking
mm,
for how what can I do to make this as easy as possible for my dog.
yeah.
Managing absences is the first thing, because obviously the more often you put your dog through a fear episode, the worse you're going to make the whole situation. And in the end, it's traumatizing. You will have a traumatized
Mm,
dog. Also, fear generalizes really quickly. You can start with one fear, and then you find that your dog is becoming increasingly anxious and wary and even fearful in other situations. So we really don't want to go there. So
mm,
also for your own sanity, you need a support network, because otherwise you really are a prisoner in your own home. And
yeah.
then and then we start the process of desensitization. It's really breaking down the process of leaving through the door and then outside the door into tiny increments. And I find that the long work is often the door. And
Mm,
once you got outside the door, and the dog is truly chilled, we can't push them beyond what they can do, then we start building up the time, and that's thrilling. And we celebrate that, don't we? We celebrate every step of the way, because that is one more step towards your dog being able to live without fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's basically it, isn't it? I mean, if you manage
Yeah.
apps, which takes a little bit of organization, perhaps, but it doesn't also have to be very expensive. If you are creative with maybe swapping dog sitting or whatever, and then starting a process of desensitization under the guidance of a professional until you know how to do it and you're not making mistakes, which make things worse. And I forgot.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
No, no worries. So we should always celebrate the small wins along the way, no matter how small. But why is consistency more powerful than intensity when it comes to essay recovery, Rosie?
But if you mean intensity, do you mean doing things quickly, or
Yeah, just like really intensifying and like, you know, throwing the kitchen sink at it or whatever and just hoping for the best. I think you have to be more consistent with it and just break it down into small bite-sized chunks, like you said, like
yeah,
5 days a week, half an hour a day. But rather than going too mad, you need to take it back a bit and be more consistent.
yeah. Well, we've talked about predictability, which
Yeah.
is really important for the dog. So something that happens sort of 5 times a week or every day. Well, this we do all sorts of weird things, and our dogs sort of put up with that. So we just kind of start this, what I call a safe ritual. What we're actually really doing with our training is establishing in your dog's life a safe ritual where they say, oh, we're
Mm.
doing that boring thing again today. Okay, I know about that and I can do that. And so we're doing that. And we're thinking about leaving, but our dog, I think, experiences it as our coming back. What we're actually practicing is when I move, even if it's just standing up and sitting down on the sofa, I'm coming back, I'm coming back, I'm coming back. There's also something to go back to John Bradshaw. When I read his book on defense of dogs all that time ago, when I was trying to help my greyhound, he said that we need to help our dogs understand that we're coming back. We're always thinking about leaving, but they need to know
But
we're
we,
coming back, right?
that's a good point.
It's a bit of a sort of sideline, but I think this is very interesting. There's more and more thought about not necessarily pathologizing, is that the word? Separation anxiety, to think it's like some kind of massive aberration. But actually, if we think about it, we've taken a species into our homes, another species, and this species, the dog, is incredibly adaptable. They have delegated their survival to us.
Mm.
And when we close the door, how are they supposed to know that we are ever coming back at all?
Mm.
Or if we're coming back at all, or if so,
Yeah.
when?
Yeah.
With our training, we can teach dogs that we are coming back, and they do learn it brilliantly. I also notice that there are different kinds of intensities with the
Mm.
clients. I've been doing this now for nearly 5 years, pretty much exclusively. I do locally some other things, but sort of online. And I have noticed that some dogs do, in fact, really, really have a trauma. Yeah, they have been shut in. I had a client whose dog had been shut in as a puppy and a young dog by a man who used to leave on business trips for several days at a time, leaving the dog in the house. Okay. So when the dog was 18 months old, he was confiscated from this person. And this dog was traumatized. Okay. So that's one scenario. And
I may.
those sort of dogs, we often need to work together with a vet or a little bit of anxiety medication to help to help that dog have some kind of comfort zone. Yeah. So
Mm.
we're doing the training, but even that dog learned as well. Yeah. But there are other dogs who, and you can't seem to tell this, I can't tell beforehand. You get a dog who's incredibly distressed and really upset and all over the place, and you start the training and they take to it like a duck to water.
Mm.
And they are like, in a few weeks' time, the caregiver's outside the door, and I'm like, I thought your dog has separation anxiety. But it can happen. All right, I'm not saying this happens in 5 days, right? But like to get outside the door in, say, a month or 6 weeks, rock solid, yeah, without your dog reacting the way they did, suggests to me that it was simply something the dog needed to learn, a skill
Mm.
that we need to prioritize, like toilet training. But that is also quite delicate because people have started, and that's very praiseworthy, to try and prevent it happening. And that means that often, they have a puppy or they've just adopted a dog from a shelter. Like I have, spent 6 years in a shelter, and then, oh, we need to practice leaving, so we're leaving, and maybe in a phase where your dog needs more support, right? So sometimes you need a little bit of fine feeling about how to go about it with this particular dog, which is another reason for getting a professional.
Yeah.
Differentiate these scenarios. But yeah, I mean, in all the years I've been doing this now, I've never had a dog where the caregivers have done the training who hasn't learnt to feel safe alone at home.
Mm.
I know that's not a
Yeah.
scientific study, it's a study of
Yeah.
one. Up to now, touch wood, um, it's very successful. So why not do that for your dog?
Yeah. Brilliant. Moving on to our final section then, which is just about reframing the guardian's role. How can we help people reframe the emotional roller coaster of supporting an anxious dog?
I'm glad you mentioned that because sometimes the caregiver is in a terrible situation. It's a hell of a shock when you realise that your dog can't be on their own. I've been there. I know what it's like. It takes a lot of organisation. It's an organisational burden, if you like. This going back to Stevie, my greyhound. He couldn't even stay with anybody else at first. So luckily he was sort of safe he felt safe in the car. And I was very privileged. I was teaching at a university, so I could organize my teaching time into blocks. I was teaching for 2 hours and then I would take him for a walk. But it was minus 20. It was an incredibly cold winter here. And I had him wrapped. This is not something I would actually advise anybody. I had him wrapped in a greyhound fleece and then a deerhound fleece over the top of, and he felt safe in the car. So that was, okay. It's not ideal, but it was the only option. But I know I lost a lot of weight rushing around from teaching to the car to home, so you're taking the dogs out for a car, coming back to that. I mean, it is a huge thing. So we need to have a lot of compassion for the caregivers and
Mm.
need to have compassion for themselves. It's a really good idea not to bombard them with myths. We're talking about, like, it's all your fault. If you didn't let your dog sleep on the bed, if you weren't spoiling your dog, if you weren't saying goodbye to
Load of
your dog,
rubbish.
if you if you would only ignore your dog when you come back, and all that we've been through today, and the caregiver knows instinctively that's not going to help. My dog is in terrible distress, so they're made
Mm.
to feel guilty on top of everything else. Yeah, so
Mm.
definitely not do that. And then I do recommend setting up a support network. Get yourself support by people who understand, not the people who are saying just leave them, kind of. If people say, I know your dog has a serious fear issue, you are helping them get over it. Well done for
Mm,
that. Yeah.
mm,
I had a client recently who's just left recently for all the best reasons because they're really successful. They tried for 5 years. Yeah. I think I
mm.
mentioned that at the beginning. Five years. So
Yeah,
people are incredibly dedicated, and also they're under a lot of pressure. You can be, for example, the butt of neighbours' complaints, even court cases if your dog has been
yeah,
barking. You can be under pressure from the landlord that if you don't sort this problem out, you're going to lose your home.
yeah.
I've had that. So I've had caregivers come to me who are absolutely distraught.
Mm,
It's so to reframe it, it's not your fault. And the
mm,
good thing is we can reliably help your dog with the right
yeah.
circumstances. And I think that's really cool. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. You asked me right at the beginning,
Uh,
why am I so passionate about educating about myths? That's why. Because myths make
Good,
it worse for everybody, for the dog and the caregiver.
definitely. What would be your advice for someone who feels like they've tried everything in inverted commas?
Well, they've probably been trying all the things that make it worse.
Mm,
I don't know. It's very difficult to say because if you mean that they've been to lots of different trainers who have given them the wrong advice, then
mm,
all I can say is I'm terribly sorry that that has happened to you and that you're experiencing this.
yeah,
But it's unlikely that they have tried a very well done process of desensitization. Because if
mm,
it's done correctly, there is no reason that their dog should be exempt from natural laws. Their dog can learn this just like every other dog can.
mm,
So that's
yeah,
what I would say is that try this, try the way we do it. And I'm really
yeah,
sorry that they've been through a lot of bad advice, most likely. Yeah.
yeah.
The other thing
All
that
right.
plays into it, and I think it's really important. I think one of the reasons that I have a lot of success is because I have a lot of experience in general with anxious and fearful dogs, dogs from a deprivation background, traumatized dogs, and so on. So one of the things that can be holding your dog back when you think you're doing everything but it's not working are other stressors, right? So we need to really look at the whole dog all the time. A
Mm,
dog is just separation anxiety on legs. There can be other things playing into this, like pain issues.
yeah,
Help lots of dogs get help for undiagnosed pain issues. For example, a client recently had discovered that their dog is barking a lot because it distracts them from the pain.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Makes
So we
sense.
look at this. I think we mentioned the dog where we changed the way they were being exercised, so they're not sort of doing this high octane or high arousal exercise for 4 hours in the dog park, but those were sniffy walks. Sometimes very small changes make an enormous difference to a dog. Looking at dogs' body language, I have a
Definitely.
client at the moment who found, they tried everything and their dog was incredibly restless. And I said, we have to take this. This is just something he does. He's sort of doing this with his face, and and he's doing something strange with his mouth, and
Mm,
it's just something he does. But then I said, I don't think this is just something he does. He's got a reason for this. And we discovered, after much soul searching and going, apart from the fact he did have pain issues, he also had ingrowing eyelashes,
okay, yeah.
and which apparently is is in certain breeds a thing. And
I only heard about that the other day, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
particularly in adolescence, right? And this dog is sort of coming up to adolescence. And it was like, oh, you'll have to operate an eye. And they found this brilliant eye specialist who says, no, we don't operate on this. I can help you. And so that is also really, really important. If you've tried everything, really everything,
Mm.
either you're following the wrong advice, probably you have been given the wrong advice, or
Mm.
to look more closely also at your dog's other needs and stressors, where we can take away anything that stresses your dog unnecessarily. We're giving them back more resources
Mm.
to think clearly, to learn, to self-regulate,
Mm.
to live a more relaxed life, right?
Yeah. Brilliant. Gosh, we've literally sailed through this episode. It literally has been jam packed full of information. Like it's oh, my mind's buzzing. So we're just going to spend the next couple of minutes wrapping up before we bring it to a close. So, a final question for you, Rosie. What's the one myth you wish we could wipe off the internet forever?
Well, it's difficult to choose one because if,
So many.
yeah, well, no, because whatever myth you are following, you're damaging your dog, right? So,
Mm.
but I think if I had to choose one, it would definitely be not crating your dog. The reason it's illegal in Austria, not only in Austria, by the way, more and more countries are making this illegal, even if you're at home, by the way, is because it is no longer considered really adequate welfare.
Mm.
Because dogs are polyphasic sleepers, so one of the five freedoms, I think, is the freedom to practice natural behavior, and dog will sleep in phases and move around. Everybody sees this with their dog. They move around during, between phases. They do that also for temperature regulation, and they can only get into deep restorative sleep, this sort of REM sleep, I think,
Mm.
when they're able to stretch their paws out flat. So there are various reasons why it's illegal here to keep your dog in a crate, unless it's
Mm.
for the purposes of a medical, recovering from a medical procedure, or for travel safety. But it
Mm.
also, I think this is something that people don't think about very much. It prevents your dog really learning the skills they need to live in your home.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Mm.
if you need to, if you have, for example, a puppy and you need to keep them safe for certain times, or you haven't got your eyes on them all the time, then it's really better to use a puppy pen or to puppy proof a room.
Mm.
And yeah, so I think it's probably the crate, but the crate is also allied to everything else. It's allied to the idea of letting them cry it out, just putting them in there, and
And using it as a punishment.
yeah, or just for our own convenience. I mean, yes, it may stop the dog taking the flat apart or your sofa apart, but just think of what that dog's actually going through. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. All right. So, Rosie, where can people connect with you, join your group, or access your training?
Well, they can. The best way really is to go to my website. I have a shiny new website
You
called
do?
gooddogpractice.com. As I say, I can't even remember what the name of my business is now. Gooddogpractice.com.
Yeah.
And that is dedicated to separation fears. So that's the easiest way, because from there you can also find your way to me on Facebook or on Instagram.
Mm.
And something really exciting is just, you're the first person to hear about this, hot off the press, is that I have been
Yes.
invited by Lisbeth Borg de Waard, who is the founder and director of the Nordic education centre for ethical dog training, to lead a forum, to host a forum in her care community. There's a care community of trainers and dog owners who can ask questions and support each other. It's an incredibly knowledgeable group. And in there, I have my own forum about separation fears where I can answer questions. But we have decided also really to define that I can only answer very general questions. But people who want to work with me then do get very generous rebates on my programs. So I think you'll pop the links below.
Yes. Yeah, the links will be in the show notes.
Yeah. I had a student who did this who used to be a model, actually, and an acting student used to be a model, and he would always say the links below. So I think
Yeah, all the links will be in the show notes, and they'll be on the Yappily website as well. So we'll make sure they're all included, and they'll be on the various platforms. Rosee Riggs, thank you so much for joining me on the Yappy Hour powered by Yappily. I've absolutely loved our conversation today, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Thank you. Thank you
You're
for
most welcome.
so many dogs and people. Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you very much. That was such a brilliant and empowering chat with Rosee Riggs. Here are some key takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, separation anxiety is not your fault, and it's not something you can fix with crates, cameras, or quick fixes. Number 2, most quick tips online don't work and can make things worse. Compassion, patience, and evidence-based training are key. Number 3, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent. Progress over perfection every time. Number 4, qualified support can be a game changer. You don't have to do it alone. Rosee, thank you for challenging the myths and giving people permission to support their dogs with empathy, not shame. If you'd like to learn more, please check out gooddogpractice.com or find Rosee's community on Facebook and Instagram. And if this episode has helped you, please consider leaving a review, subscribe, and share it with someone who's navigating life with an anxious dog. This has been the Yappy Hour, and I'll see you next time.